But yeah, so let's get into this. Ebrahim Turner is the genius behind helping entrepreneurs master their internal state so they can create the business and life of their dreams through his company, Quantum Mind. Welcome, Ebrahim. Thank you so much for taking the time, dude. I know you are with us from Bali.
Yeah, in Bali at the moment, dude. And yeah, thank you for having me, and good job introducing me as a genius, because now we're going to be best friends. So
Yes.
Great start.
Yes, it's a great start. And I think, it's well deserved. Like we were talking about earlier, there's so much I was able to dive into just watching a few of your older podcasts. And I like we're going to get into the story. I just think it's really cool. And it makes a lot of sense. And I like when things connect. I don't like when sometimes I'll research guests, stuff doesn't add up. With you, it really adds up and it's cool. And I can really validate a lot of the stuff you say. So we're going to, break down entrepreneurship, the quantum mind, and then the life experience as a whole. I think this is a good opportunity. Someone definitely reputable in that space. So a few things, like, what are you most excited about right now?
Oh, good question. I would definitely say right now it's like relaunching my mastermind within Quantum Mind. So by the time this goes out, it would have actually relaunched. So I can say it's called 5D Creator. And it's basically working with business owners to help them scale their business by mastering their internal state. And this is basically the culmination of like my whole entrepreneurship journey over the last 7 years. So yeah, literally I'm just in this like beautiful villa in Bali at the moment. It's got like a 6-person staff. And yesterday we like filmed the whole like video for it. And yeah, just like super excited about that because, so many guys get into entrepreneurship and nobody tells you about like how to actually deal with like all the internal shit that comes up. And so I basically just figured all of that out the hard way. And so this is like, yeah, that's what I'm pouring my energy into now. So that's definitely the first thing that comes up.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Why Bali?
So I've wanted to come to Bali for the last 4 years. For whatever reason, something came up, ex-relationship, some made up thing called C19 that some guys, threw around. Whatever reason I didn't come, right? And so this year I was like, all right, dude, been saying you're going to do this for so many years, just like go. So I just decided literally 2 months ago, I'm just going to go. And then basically, yeah, just, sold all my shit in London, packed a suitcase, came out here. And really it was just to be in a totally different environment. Like one of the things I teach is like internal state equals external reality. I say it all the time. One of the things that affects your internal state is your environment, right? And environment is so, so key to like having whatever your version of success is. And so for me, where I've moved more into like coaching and helping others, there's a lot of people in Bali who are, in that space who resonate with that. And so I'm basically just putting myself in a position where I get pulled forward by the people around me. Like literally the day after tomorrow, I'm going for like coffee with a guy called Mike Chang, who some of you guys might know his name. If you've ever watched YouTube back in the day, he was like the founder of this thing called Six Pack Shortcuts. And he was like, just blew up. He was like the Tai Lopez of that time, but in like health. Nice. Like people like him move to Bali, like go on a spiritual journey, and you can just connect with these people, right? Because you're just in the same spot, basically. So basically just for that reason, it's a magnet for like entrepreneurs and stuff.
Yeah, no, that's sick. And now in Bali specifically, are you, is there any events that you kind of like, is there anything in person that you're doing on the networking side? Or is it more you went out there, you have your plan, and then you're executing the plan while you're out there due to like the peace and what I assume, I haven't been there, but like the natural flow of, just everything there?
Yeah, definitely. Like, so it was a question like, am I doing like in-person networking while I'm out here?
Yeah. Was your plan going out there to like, did you build basically, what you wanted to do before you got out there, and then now you're just going to execute that? Or are you going out there with the purpose of networking? I've got this thing now I'm working on, and, we're trying to build it that way. Or did you go out there for the peace and the quiet?
Got you. Yeah. So I'd already built it before coming out to Bali. Like I built the foundation. I have like a whole structure. I have guys going through it. But basically the reason for coming out here was just to take all that to the next level, get like super focused, but then also like network with other people, right? Because there's, like I said, so many people here. So the thing is with Bali is, depending on where you live, like there's always something really cool you could be doing every single day. So on one hand, it's sick, right? Because you've got so many opportunities. On the other hand, like it takes self-discipline if you're in a focus mode like I'm in. Like I am in like a focus mode at the moment. So it means saying no to a lot of things, but also you get to come from like a real place of abundance. Yeah. Because you get to, like for me, I limit my like social events. So I have like, at the moment, I have X number of social events that I'll go per week. And so it means like, if I'm saying yes to something, it's like, there's a trade-off, you know, I'm not just like willy-nilly going along to everything. And so it just makes everything a bit more intentional, right? Because if I'm showing up, like I'm there, you know, fully kind of thing. Yeah. So yeah, that's kind of how
you took the word right out of my mouth. What is the purpose behind? I want to talk about that. Are you consistently intentional with, you know, the events that you do per week? Like, how long have you been on this mindset as far as going out and like nightlife? And why did you get started with it?
So I have phases, right? So there's phases within the year where I'll be more focused or like more laid back, but it also doesn't necessarily mean like it's just like in months. It can go over periods of years, right? And I think this is the thing a lot of guys miss. It's like you decide on your own phases. So like when I was like in university, for example, I was like, I didn't have like, I was trying businesses. Like I tried like drop shipping, like Amazon FBA, like Forex trading, like the classic.
The whole circle.
Everything, bro. I tried everything. Like some like one of my first businesses on Amazon was a matcha tea company, right? So I sold like matcha tea, and it's funny because I was just at lunch today, and they had matcha. So I was like, oh, like by the way, where's it from? And I remember I kept asking this poor woman so many questions about the origin, what grade is it, what harvest, and she was like, "Fuck this guy."
Oh my god.
But that's the beauty of it, right? Because you learn so much about all these different topics. But yeah, back then it was just going out, like partying a lot, you know, just doing the typical things that an 18, 19-year-old kid's going to do. Like I definitely like hadn't figured all this stuff out back then. It took me a while. But now it's like, I do still love to go out. I do still like to go to party, but it's not necessarily like, I don't necessarily like need to go out and get like drunk and stuff like that. No, I can just go have a really good time, because there's always like, okay, well, what's the payoff for this, right? Because everything is a trade-off. Like nothing is 100% reward. There's even if I go to you, here's $1 million, like you would say that's the closest thing to 100% reward, right? Because you just get $1 million, but actually there's a lot of stuff that comes with that, right? There's a lot of responsibility. You got to deal with people now asking you for money. You got to figure out the best way to like invest it. You've now got all of these options, and now that's going to mess with your head because you've never had that kind of freedom before up until that point. So everything has like an upside and a downside, right? So I just look at things like that logically. And now, like, if I'm going to go and like network or do something fun, like there's always going to be like multiple reasons for it, not just one thing, right? And then it just makes things, just like a better use of time that way.
And do you think you have to come to that naturally? Do you think, like, what would 21-year-old Ebrahim be saying right now, like hearing you say that?
I would probably like nod my head and be like, yeah, that makes sense. But I wasn't acting that way, dude. I knew a lot of the right things to do at that age and younger, but I wasn't doing them yet. Like I knew it and I wasn't doing it. So it was just this vicious cycle, right? Because I'd go out, I'd party, right? I'd be out partying, but then I'd have my like Aura ring on, right? To like track my sleep. So it's like as if to say like, that's going to fix it, right? Or I'd like take another make money online course to be like, okay, well, that will get me to the next level. So I'll just do that. And then, oh, that doesn't work because I didn't put in the action, right? Because the inputs just weren't there yet. Like it's basically like, I knew the things for a long time. Like I knew the things I should be doing, but I just actually wasn't doing them.
Yeah.
And so that's the difference, right? It's actually embodying it. Like, as I talk about embodiment all the time, which just means like living from that place. Like, you actually do the things you know are going to make you successful. But that takes, that takes a level of discipline, right? It takes a level of like commitment. You've got to be either experiencing enough pain of where you currently are to do that for enough time, or enough like inspiration to say, you know what, like, I'm not going to stay out until 2 a.m. tonight because I'm so excited to wake up on Monday. Like, this was me last night. I was at this like social event, having this bonfire on the beach here in Canggu, talking to really cool, like interesting people, you know, like sharing stories. And at a certain point, I'm like, look, this is amazing, but I need to wake up tomorrow to get my shit done, right? And that's not coming from discipline. It's coming from inspiration. Yeah. And so like, you can, oftentimes it starts with pain. Like for me, I started my first marketing agency when I was in my final year of university, out of the pain from not wanting to go into 9 to 5. Like the thought of working a job until I'm 60, then retiring, and like maybe having a house was fucking soul destroying. And so it was from like fear that I actually started my business. Now, that's the same for a lot of guys. Yeah. But the problem is that unless you move past that, unless you upgrade your identity as you upgrade your business and level up in your business, that thing is always going to come and pull you back. And like, this is exactly what happened to me, right? I would get to a certain level of business success, making 10K a month, 20K a month, whatever. But then my identity hadn't leveled up with me yet. So then I would self-sabotage and then come back down, or I would go and like party, come back down, or whatever, right? Any input. And so this is like one of the things that took me a while to figure out. It's actually all in business is a spiritual game. It's an internal game, right? And if you look at guys like Iman, right? I've like spent a little bit of time with him. His number one advantage was the fact that he was meditating when he was 14 in a toilet cubicle in school, right? No one wants to pay attention to that because it's not flashy, it's not cool, it's not sexy, but that is the reason for his success. And so similarly with this stuff, it's like, if you can just master yourself, then you can go crush the business, but you can also crush any area of life.
Yeah. And I'm so glad you said that about the spirituality in business. There's a couple things you hit on there that I think are going to help people a lot. The first part you mentioned about how you knew what was right, but you weren't consistently doing it, or you just like, you knew it was good for you and whatnot. And then what was the moment that you consistently did it? Like, I know you talked about that pain of working that 9 to 5. Do you remember like a specific moment or age where it was just, okay, this is my 100 days in a row dialed in and I'm not going to stop after that, or like that moment for you?
Yeah, there's been different periods of it. One of the first periods was when it was actually like, I started my agency when I was at university, but I was doing like exams and stuff, and I still wanted to like try and get a good grade, which was fucking useless. But anyway, after that, I then went and lived with my parents for a little while after graduating. And I remember all I wanted to do was just freaking move out. Like, love my parents, you know, they're great. We had a good relationship, but I just did not want to live there. I was working from like, I had this like little converted, basically a shed pretty much, which I was working out of on a little desk. It was freezing cold. And like the UK is like not warm for like 10 months of the year. So I was working out of this thing. I was like, had my little rebounder that I learned from Tony Robbins from going to his seminars. I had 2 giant whiteboards on the wall, like huge whiteboards with all my goals across all areas. I would like just put in so much input into it that I did start to like get some success. Cool. And I was then able to like move out. I was then able to like get a penthouse apartment and like be like, I just wanted to like have my own freedom in terms of like just doing what I want to do and like living by myself. Right. That was all I wanted to do so desperately. And so that was the first time I did it. Now there's a lot of things I learned through doing that I would do differently now, but that was it. Yeah. I think there is a time where you just got to use will to be able to get to where you want to get to, right? It's just not a long-term sustainable thing that typically that you can do, right? Which is why most guys then get burnout, which is why they then, have imposter syndrome or self-sabotage or, like look at other things, because it's like everything comes in balance.
Yeah. And I'm curious, I think that's all awesome. What made you think it was possible? Because I think a lot of guys and a lot of the DMs I get are, why are you able to do this? Or like, they're like, they don't think it's even feasible to get paid to do social media. Like there's still like a very large number of people that don't think like an agency or something is like, they're like, oh, it's too easy, you don't have to go anywhere. Or, oh, it's too easy. It's not easy, right? Like that's what we're talking about. But what made you believe that, yes, I can have that penthouse apartment? What was there anyone you kind of saw that did some like a similar, or you tried to emulate, or did it just kind of come to you naturally? Look, that's the freedom and the power of the internet has told me there's, I can create freedom doing it this way.
Like if one other person in the world is doing it, then why not me? That was always my mindset. Like,
that's
if
awesome.
I can see it, if I can see an example of it being possible, then I believe I'm smart enough to figure it out for myself. That was it. And like, but then from that point, like I did like get mentors, right? And that was a big thing. Like that was one of my like strategic advantages, is that I always like I saw the value in mentors early on. So there was one guy called Marcus, who actually, this was back when I was in university as well. He came in and spoke one time about marketing. And he ran more of like a PPC like Google Ads agency, but like a real agency, like, 30 employees, office space, like, working with like big 50K a month retainers, like, and I just saw him, right? And I was like, oh, this guy seems to have it figured out. He's like 10 years older than me. Back then he was like exactly where I would have wanted to be in 10 years, right? So I just walked up to him, and this was after being introduced to Ty Lopez, who just constantly talked about mentors, right? Finding a mentor, find a mentor, find a mentor. So I was just programmed to try and find a mentor. And then this guy just appears, and I'm like, well, here's my shot. So I walk up to him.
Yeah.
And I just stumble up, right? And everyone's asking him questions. There's a whole queue of people. And I was like the last guy in the queue. I waited. And just as he was packing up, I was like, hey, I really liked your talk. I really want to like work for you for free. And he just kind of like laughed and was just like, no, but we can go for a coffee. Cool. And, yeah. And basically like we just became friends, right? Like with mentorship relationships, like, yes, of course, mentors can practically teach you things, but the most valuable part for me in that relationship was just being around someone who was just already operating the exact life that back then I wanted to live. So just through conversation, just through osmosis and seeing it, like that was the biggest advantage, because I was like, oh yeah, of course this is possible, right? Like, because someone's actually living that life. And so that like over the shoulder kind of learning for me is the most powerful.
Yeah, and I've also found that extremely valuable. It was a blessing for me when I got to university at 18. I really got into this business program that allowed me to graduate in 3 years. And a big reason I got in was for the company I started from 16 to 18, where I was selling luxury for private sellers, basically, whether it was motors or furniture or whatnot. And they introduced me to a kid who had the same business. I thought I had a genius idea. I thought nobody was doing this. And they introduced me to a kid who's doing like $30,000 a month on eBay sales. And he started by selling all the mini fridges in the campus. And he's 4 years older than me. And they introduced me right away to and his connection was the head of one of the heads of the business school. So by knowing him, I got to meet the head of the business school. And then we just all talked, and the guy said, hey, go talk to Chase, just go in his office. And I said, okay. So I went in his office. He's working on some stuff for this guy who's his mentor. And Chase is big into the real estate side of things too. And I told him about my business, and we talked for 4.5 hours. And now 3 years later, like to this day, I call him say, this is what I'm doing. He was one of the first guys to tell me to get focused on one thing and stop trying to be a million different people. And like, he told me like not that I was wasting time running track in college, but that he saw at 18 where my passion was, and saw that I wasn't able to get to the goals I wanted to get to with school and track and, you know, like that whole thing. So I agree 100%. Once you find the people that are just, they do something you want to do or around that area, get around them. And it's 100 times more beneficial than anyone who's not on that plane. And like you said, you know, right? Like when you know when people are giving off good energy and, you know, you can relate. Like we could look at each other's Instagram, and I want to talk about this because I want to get into the social media side of things a little bit, and tell we had similar thing. Like when I saw your podcast with George Brock and then kind of just going through it, I was like, I could tell we think very similarly. I was like, oh, this is very, very cool. And it's something I came to naturally. So I want to talk about the Instagram game a little bit. What is the importance of having a good Instagram in 2022 and kind of beyond? And what can someone do today to improve theirs?
Good question. So I'll preface this by saying I'm definitely not like the most expert guy at this stuff. I actually deleted Instagram for 2 years. I actually, like, if you can find it, I have an old account and it just says retired from IG, and it's like legit when I just gave it up, right? But the reason I did that back then, and I'll get onto like the importance I feel of it now, was because I was a consumer. I was purely a consumer of it. I wasn't actually using it intentionally to produce an outcome. So I got back onto Instagram only this year actually, and started using it more, but to produce and to connect with people. So for me, one of the big reasons for having it was to start building up a global network, number one. And really, like, the best way to do that is through social media, right? Because you can instantly just tell what someone's about based on what they're posting. Now, of course, you can like fabricate stuff, you can make yourself look a certain way, but generally you can get a vibe for someone, right? So I just look at it like being able to network at massive scale. And I'm always like, for me, I just want to 80-20 everything. So it's like, and I'm also like slightly more of an introverted guy. So I get my energy from like being quiet, being by myself. So the idea of like trying to interact with thousands of people a day is just like hell to me. So Instagram or whatever just makes it so much easier. And so, you can use it to like, first of all, build a global network, right? So you can literally connect, like exactly what I did here when I moved to Bali. By the time I got to Bali, I already had a taxi waiting for me, a villa. I had all the shit I needed without me doing anything. And that was through connecting with a really good friend of mine now, who we met on Instagram, right? Through a course that we were both in. And so that's physically impossible without social media, right? So it's key for that, but then also for business. Now, like, it's where everyone goes to, right? It's and for dating as well. Like it's the number one like dating app in the world. So I love it. Personally, I do think it's a double-edged sword. So one of the protocols I put in place is I only download Instagram once I'm finished with work for the day. So, and the reason I do that is because it's so easy to just go and like respond to a DM and then get sucked into like a newsfeed. Even with that, like I recommend, like, if you are using Instagram, don't follow more than like 150 people. The reason why is because when we used to live in tribes, there were around that number, around 130, 150, 160. And that was the amount of people we can actually like interact with, right? And have a healthy relationship. So I never follow more than that for that reason.
Cool.
And then also I only like will follow people who are either like at my level or they're inspiring me to get to the next level. And so similarly, like with what I post, to me, it's like a vision board. Like I literally look at it like, okay, this is the life I'm crafting. And then I see it like every day if I go on it or however often I go on it. Cool. And that's actually inspiring me, right? So that's what I think about it and how I use it.
Yeah. And I think that's just hearing your opinion on it. And then, knowing that a lot of people aren't asked why they use their Instagram. And once I started asking myself that, mine got extremely better. So I think like one big takeaway from that is ask yourself why you're using it. And again, like I feel like everything just keeps coming back to being as intentional as possible. So with your expertise on like, you know, obviously what you've built and in the mindset, you know, what can someone do to practice being as intentional as possible? Like, is it the way they meditate? Do you think it's just taking time to themselves to decide what they really want? Is that how you can be more intentional, is come to terms really with what you want? Or like, what's your take on that? And would you agree that, you know, a lot of what success comes from is those intentional actions, that you like having intentional action with towards what you want?
Yeah. So here's how to become more intentional. This is something you can do right now. Before you go and do anything, right? So let's say you're about to go and open Instagram. Tune in with yourself and just notice how you feel, right? And notice how you feel before going on it. Then at some point during, notice how you feel in the middle. And then after, once you finish, tune in again. How do you feel after? And you can run this experiment to literally optimize your entire life, because you'll instantly be able to tell, oh, wow, I went on Instagram and now I feel like shit, or I feel depleted, right? Or I went to the gym and now I feel euphoric and full of energy. I want to go crush my goals. And what this does is it reprograms not just your subconscious mind, but it reprograms your entire psyche to then start optimizing for things that make you feel better. And eventually, by running this experiment with everything, this is the difference between like willpower and just resonance. Willpower requires you to put in effort, right? And in order to, like, if it's effort to go to the gym initially, it's willpower, right? To get into the swing of it. But then once you start going to the gym regularly enough, you then start to love like your physical transformation. You notice you get like some biceps, right? You notice that you feel really good for it. Like maybe you had some negative thoughts, now they've gone away. You feel high energy after. And then at a certain point, it actually resonates with you more to do it than to not do it. And then it's just easy, right? That's when you've actually like shifted at the subconscious level. So yeah, I actually forgot what the question was. Can you remind me?
No, you answered. You hit it right on the nose. I was curious how someone could be more intentional.
That was it. Yeah. So
yeah.
Just to wrap that up. Yeah. So to become more intentional, just start tuning into like how you actually feel. Right.
Cool.
And look, it can be like tough, right? Because you might notice like, damn, I'm actually like feeling exhausted. Maybe I feel anxious about like clients for the business, like not coming in for the business. Maybe I feel like regret about past mistakes, right? So it can bring things up, but this is how you got to take responsibility for your own state. Like for me, my number one asset is my state. Like the reason why I've been going for 14 hours today, basically straight, and still feel amazing is because I prioritize my internal state, right? Which is affected by your thoughts, your feelings, and your environment. So I'm just focusing on the inputs to me. And then I know that my output will always be like as good as it can be.
Cool. And now let's go back a little bit. Where did it start